Yeah, so I think we're headed towards a future where every superintendent on a construction site is going to have a virtual AI assistant that they can ask questions to and that can do certain tasks for them. For example, hey, what are my biggest at-risk zones next week? Right? Where am I behind schedule? And then the AI assistant goes boop 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 boop. You know, good morning, Mika.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah Piippo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager for Intel.
Everyone, I'm Surab. I'm the founder and CEO of Doxel AI. We're an automated progress tracking solution, and we use cameras to identify project delays early so that folks can take rapid action and stop problems from snowballing into giant concerns.
Each podcast is designed to give you strategies and tactics that you can implement right away. Today, I've invited Suraban on a random show. We have hung out many times before, and we have some of my favorite conversations. So instead of keeping something scripted in a hypothetical that we usually do, I thought, why don't I just invite all of you in to one of our regular conversations where we just talk about literally everything. So I will start things off since I invited you here. Hit me with the latest and greatest on progress capture and I'll make it a little more specific. What areas of the technology excite you more? Is it the software or the hardware?
100% the software. And I think anything that's exciting about hardware right now is usually a short-term way to make up for bad software. But yeah, I'm super excited about where the software is headed. I think that progress tracking started out kind of manual, where it was literally, things written down on pieces of paper and logged every day. Then it kind of became sort of the second generation of that, where it was still sort of the same thing, but in a more structured manner in an iPad or in a computer or what have you. I think like progress tracking is kind of going into its third era now, where it can take people completely out of the loop, and cameras and artificial intelligence can figure things out and kind of file those progress reports that are not that fun and make construction fun again. So
Make construction
that,
fun again.
yeah, that's right.
You need
So
to get some swag. We need to get some swag with that. That's the
yeah,
next Doxel. I might steal that. Oh, it's a race to who gets the trademark first.
yeah, exactly. So so um, so yeah, I mean that's what I'm excited about most in progress tracking right now. And there's all kinds of things that open up beyond that, that unlock new use cases and new value that progress tracking currently does not enable because it's not as fast, it's not as accurate, and it's not as
Yeah,
comprehensive. So that's what I'm excited about.
yeah. Yeah, and folks, we're going to go super deep, super fast. And so if you aren't aware of progress tracking, I'm going to put some links in the show notes to help people catch up because I want to go super deep, super fast, and I don't want to have to spend time on an overview. Uh, but so let me ask you this. Visual progress tracking, it reaches an endpoint at a certain thing when things aren't visible, right?
Mhm.
And so you'll have actual field work that's not visible, so cable poles and things like that, underground trench work that you may not be able to see. But then you also have a subset of progress that's not visible, that is design creation, contract completion, those sorts of things. Where do you see this coming into a full picture?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think the first part of it is great progress tracking is smart enough to make deductions based on visual progress. It can make smart guesses of what could have happened in the middle. So as a quick example, our software can automatically deduce that the cable has been pulled if it sees wires drop down and ready at the junction boxes, right? That's a quick
Yeah.
example, even though it can't see the cable inside the conduit, right? So there's other examples like that of smart things that visual progress tracking solutions can actually deduce. But beyond that, I think that as progress tracking is getting more and more embedded into schedule, we're getting to a point where a complete picture of visual and non-visual can all come together. But the key thing is it's got to be progress tracking that's able to provide insight into schedule, right? So like progress tracking is a term that's used for, it's very broad spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So on kind of think of it as levels of intelligence, just like autonomous cars. So at sort of the lowest level of intelligence, you've got just photos, right? Where you can look at photos off the site, and that's a form of progress tracking. At the highest level of intelligence, the AI is able to figure out what's actually installed, is able to attribute rules of credit to it, is able to figure out which schedule activity does it actually align with, and is able to completely update a schedule, right? For
Yeah.
anything that's visual and some things that are non-visual through the deductions we talked about. So yeah, that, and as we get closer and closer to that, we're going to get closer and closer to visual and non-visual all coming together through a single pane of glass. So yeah, that's what I'm extremely excited about. And the more vendors that are in kind of that highest level, like level 5, the faster and faster that will go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That was my question. What do you got?
I mean, we've always built the company to be at level 5
Yeah.
intelligence on progress tracking, and initially we started out doing that through means that were different than cameras, right? So we initially used lidar to do that. This is several years ago, and we've now moved
Yeah.
to cameras because our intelligence has gotten good enough to provide high granularity updates on 80 plus stages of construction across all trades at a very deep level of depth on
Yeah.
schedule. So
And
we've
it's not
always built
worth
the
like
company.
the data. It was harder to process all of is that why you switched to basically photo based, because there was just so much data on the lidar side that you were getting enough value out of just doing the non lidar detection?
So about 7 or 8 years ago, when I started the company, the goal of the company was always to be able to provide level 5 degree of intelligence on progress tracking, which means percent complete data embedded into a schedule, embedded into a WBS, things like that. And
Yeah.
at the time, it wasn't really practical to do that with cameras for a variety of
Right.
reasons. I mean, deep learning was just picking up, and that kind of thing. Um, as deep learning, machine learning got better and better and better, and as there were more and more examples of cameras being made smarter with the use of technology, we felt comfortable making that switch to cameras. So we made that switch about 4 or 5 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
and we've captured hundreds of millions of square feet now on cameras, and our tool is entirely camera based today, right? So we offer that percent complete intelligence at the schedule level uh, entirely on cameras at this point in time, right? LiDAR is a very, very heavy kind of solution. It's very, very hard to scale. It usually requires people running it in the job. And we think that,
I remember the backpacks that people would have to wear. They were walking around like
yeah,
they're on the Ghostbusters team.
100%, or like one of those things which like rotate and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the brains are getting much smarter, much faster than the eyes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and we're very bullish on cameras versus like lidar or augmented reality or things of that
Yeah.
nature for construction.
Yeah. Yeah. Switching gears just a little bit, one thing that came to mind is um, if someone wanted to get into this field and they're coming out of college, obviously Doxel will have some job postings, but what are some things that, there's also a load of people that are like me, like, I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to go back to school. I've reached that point in my life where I don't know if I can handle it. So you have a load of schedulers out there. They're interested in technology. They want to do it. Maybe they try to pitch this at their company. They've been told no. What are some ways that they can get into this and start to understand it and use it and really comprehend, I mean, the sheer complete step jump that this is going to offer the construction industry?
Yeah, so I'd say, I mean, we're always open to doing demos and letting people play with the tool. I think usually we try our best to empower folks who are evangelizing this software inside their company with the right tools to get it procured, right? Like, so our sales team helps a lot with business. Our sales team is quite technical actually, and they help a lot with things like business cases, how to develop how to navigate procurement inside an org and that kind of thing. So hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But if it does, I mean, just give us a shout out and we'd be happy to give you a little environment in which you can play and kind of see what this tool can do for your team.
Is there any sort of, like uh, education that people need to understand, graph databases or ML or AI? I mean, is there anything needed for that, for people to kind of start diving in and getting their feet wet into this sort of space?
Oh, you mean people? Sorry, maybe I misunderstood your question. You're talking about
Yeah,
people who want to start building this or
not
contribute to building
necessarily.
it?
Yeah, I mean, just somehow get in and contribute. I mean, think about just the AI space right now. Someone might, before they become an AI engineer, they might just start out using ChatGPT and like, oh, this is what it does and how it works. And then they can, further go on and figure out how to learn how to code and do other things like that. That's where I was headed of, you have a scheduler sitting out there listening, like, man, this is some cool stuff. I want to get into it. I want to use it. I want to figure it out. They go to their company. Oh, we're not going to do it. Blah, blah, blah. Get out of here, junior scheduler. But they still want to keep, like me, I have a passion for it. I'm interested in it. Like, how does that person keep going?
Yeah, so I think a great way to stay in touch with us is we have a great newsletter. We love interacting with folks who are interested in the space, and we meet with them in a variety of ways on the circuit of trade shows and that kind of thing. But I think outside of that, if your question is more related to how do they actually contribute, Doxel, for example, has a group of customer advisors that we do regular product discovery with. And that's a great way for someone like that, like you described, to contribute to not only what the tool is doing today, but what they want the tool to do in the future.
Yeah.
And we've actually built a lot of that, right? In fact, everything we've built is something that a customer has asked us for. So yeah, we'd be happy to take a look at that and potentially get someone like that involved in our advisory group.
Yeah. Another one I have that came to mind is you mentioned level 5,
Mm-hmm.
but so level 5 progress capture in any project, progress capture isn't the end point. You're supposed to use that progress for something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing if we drew a little, a McKinsey or a BCG graphic on screen that was super, super beautiful right now, you could show the different 5 stages, but you could also show at each stage something gets unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a photo, you probably just unlock that, hey, someone remotely can look at it and verify that something's there, right? But as you go up, more and more things get unlocked. What do you think are some of the biggest things that are now and that are coming in the future that level 5, crazy AI progress capture unlocks?
Yeah, so you mean like, what's level 6, 7, 8, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, maybe if you keep going up on but like, for example, if you potentially can capture how your data center or whatever facility was built in a more granular level than just having a P6 schedule that is tied to the design. Potentially in the future, you can actually start looking at machine driven optimizations on how you build that schedule, right? Because you have that
100%.
actual progress. So, what are some of those that maybe don't exist today, but it's coming in the future and potentially will be unlocked by that level of capture?
Yeah, so I think we're headed towards a future where every superintendent on a construction site is going to have a virtual AI assistant that they can ask questions to and that can do certain tasks for them. For example, um, hey, what are my biggest at-risk zones next week? Right, where am I behind schedule? And then the AI assistant goes boop 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 boop. You know, good morning, Mika.
Yeah. Do
you
you
know,
think that it would
like,
recommend almost like Google Maps, like a readjustment of sequencing as well? Like,
yeah, that's
hey,
why I
we
was
see that you're doing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's why I was headed. So like, not only would this AI assistant be able to say these are the areas where you're behind schedule, but it would also be able to say this is where I recommend you optimize, right? And that optimization can actually be quite complicated. So a great task for AI, that optimization can be across budget, schedule, and quality. So for example, hey, you're behind in zone 6. I've just detected a trade stacking event, right? You're going to have two trades in this area at one time. I've done the math, and I recommend you pay this trade 10% extra for this specific week to work overtime and work in double shifts, because if you don't do that, it's going to cost you this much for being behind schedule. So something that just makes it extremely simple to make a decision, and right where the
Yeah.
superintendent says, yeah, that sounds good, and the AI assistant goes and informs the subcontractors, because the subcontractors will all have their own AI assistants as well, right? So that's the direction I think we're headed in, and all of that starts with having very, very granular, very detailed understanding of percent complete on the schedule itself. And then that can aid in a variety of ways for future projects, because there's so much knowledge in the field that kind of gets lost the next time a project is planned, and it kind of
Oh, for sure.
starts from scratch. So I think all of those insights and knowledge can get involved in planning the next couple of projects. So that's kind of where I think things are headed. And I think really it will unlock the full potential of superintendents, which is to motivate folks, which is to move the job around, to plan things, to get things done, and that kind of thing.
Do you think this would eliminate the planner or scheduler role on construction sites, or how does it evolve when we get to that level 5 utopia?
Yeah, so I actually think that the number of planners and schedulers will increase, not decrease, because the number of things you can do with that information changes. So a quick tangent on this.
Yeah.
Um, So originally, when double ledger accounting kind of began, it was all done manually, right? And then computers came around and accounting started being done automatically. And everyone thought like accountants would kind of go out of business and we won't need accountants anymore, except that all kinds of new things started being unlocked as a result of accounts being closed fast and accurately, like scenario modeling, looking into the future, that kind of thing. And accountants and finance folks actually increased, they didn't decrease, because it unlocked all these new use cases and new value. So when you think about planning and scheduling, let's think a little bit about how that role could evolve over the course of the next 2 decades or so. I think one, there's going to be a lot of focus on applying insights from the past into the future.
Yeah.
um, I think second, every job is different, and I think will still be different. So there's always going to be things that people need to anticipate, in my view. That planners and schedulers will be very involved in that. Hey, what's different about this next job versus the previous one? And I think beyond that, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to optimize a project mid-flight. Sometimes that requires, compromises on the owner's side. Sometimes that requires compromises on the sub side or the GC side. And I
Yeah.
think schedulers and planners will have a lot more work during a project in helping that land on time
Yeah.
with scenario modeling and that kind of thing, and the right trade-offs.
And that's a confusing process at best right now when you're on a job and you're a scheduler and you find that different, oh, hey, this could save X. You have to go through so many steps to even get the data out to prove it, then go around the people to get it actually initiated and engaged just to execute it. I mean, I've worked on jobs where I've pulled that before, and honestly, by the time the work passes, I'm like, yeah, we can go do that now. And I'm like, well, we've missed our opportunity. And so, yeah, I think getting the speed of data and the quality of it, and then having that more bought in and understood, that's probably going to elevate the game for planners and schedulers. Well, I'm glad you said you wouldn't eliminate. It's not going to eliminate planners and schedulers, so no
It's
one needs
actually
to
going to
freak
grow.
out there. Yeah, I think it's almost similar in my mind. Is like Uber. People are like, well, Uber eliminated taxis, and like, no, actually, just technically kind of made more taxi drivers, right?
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
more people are driving rideshare, and it's a little bit of a different, way to go about it. But I think it's, obviously the consumer enjoys it more.
And just to add to that, I mean, think about all the smaller projects right now, which may not be able to afford a full time scheduler, and think about all the
Mm,
things that they could optimize there,
yeah,
right? And I mean, if you imagine scheduler's capability increasing to cover more projects, you could start to see that long tail start to be optimized, which often is where there's a lot of opportunity to generate profits for general contractors, right? Because they're strapped
yeah.
for talent and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think anytime you look in the past, when people thought technology will eliminate jobs, it usually landed up creating more. I think we underestimate our potential as humans time and time and time again. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely, for sure. One question I had was, a little bit more about your journey and not necessarily about advanced progress tracking. But it, what if anyone's out there who's listening who wants to start a technology company and has that grand idea? Like, what is your kind of advice to them? And maybe just put it in like 1, 3, 5 year buckets. So year one, they're coming up with the idea, they're getting the pitch, they're going to get money, VC. Maybe three, and you can change the buckets of these years if as you see fit. 3 year, maybe they have like a little bit of an intro level company going, and they're maybe making some money. And then 5 years, they kind of maybe turn towards growth. Um, just a couple bullet points in each of those buckets. What would you provide for recommendations for people?
I think my first piece of advice is don't try to follow a timeline early on, because that timeline often, that 135 timeline often leads to short-term decisions that lead to short-term benefit, but that ultimately don't lead to a long-term weatherproof company. Um, Second thing I'd say is, I think in year one, like, applying that, don't feel any pressure to raise venture capital. Or if you're trying to bootstrap your company, I would say, try to keep your needs as low as possible within that first year, so that you're not feeling pressured to start monetizing too early, right? And let me explain that a little bit. I think the first year, or it can be even longer than that or shorter than that, needs to be completely focused on understanding a customer's problem, right? And understanding a set of customers' problems. Um, Revenue growth and broad market fit for a product are not the same thing. And solving for revenue growth too early versus building a product that's solving a critical problem that's validated to solve that problem for a large set of customers are two completely different things, right? You could solve a problem for one or two customers, and you could start to get a lot of revenue from them, but it usually doesn't lead to that long lasting weatherproof success. So I'd say, create a customer advisory board early. um, Treat them as a cohort, learn from them, and constantly iterate on the product and actually test if the product is solving the problem that you thought it would solve. And give customers an opportunity to get out every month in that early time. You actually don't want to sign customers on for too long, because you want them to be able to vote with their dollars that this is not solving the problem for me in the early years. And once you have that kind of state where you feel like you're solving that problem, and you've gone through a couple of renewal cycles, and you have validation that it's solving a problem for a broad cohort of customers, that's where I would say a founder should start to think about monetizing it in a bigger way. But don't try to go too fast. That those early years and nailing the product, I think are the most important thing, and set the company's foundation up for long-term success.
Oh, that's perfect. Perfect advice. Now, I was trying to encourage more people in the construction industry to think about the entrepreneurship as a pathway of success, either through consultancy, creating your own company. And just, I feel like we need more people creating in this space than we actually have right now. I think a lot of it gets locked into industry standards and standard certifications, and people get stuck on these railroad tracks, and then they don't realize how much different opportunity out there exists in the world. About, yeah, you can do this or do that. I mean, I definitely see a place where people launch their own consultancy where they specialize in taking Doxel and getting it on site, and then using Doxel as a pathway of success. I mean, you look at any sort of construction software that exists out there in the long term. There are P6 consultants. That's all they do. So I guess in my mind, like, why wouldn't there be like Doxel consultants? And then that could be a potential future path for you, in the coming years.
Yeah, for sure. I think Doxel consultants would focus more on how to extract the best output from Doxel, because Doxel is very fast and easy to implement. It doesn't need
Yeah.
consultants to implement, but there's a lot of things you can do with the data post Doxel, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but-
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
the other thing I'd also mention, I love the thing you just said about consultancy, because um, I think venture capital is not the only way to add value in society through technology, right? Like there's tons of consulting companies or product companies that are bootstrapped, that are built from the ground up, that are phenomenal companies that are adding a ton of societal value. And I think at the end of it, most folks want to be entrepreneurs to create some form of societal value and have pride in what they're doing. And there's this kind of all this media talk about venture capital and all that stuff. That's not the only path, right? It's a path that makes sense for a certain type of company or a certain type of goal, but it may not make sense and it may actually be negative for a different type of company and a different type of goal. So that's the other thing that I tend to say to folks who are starting up from the construction industry. The good news is I see a lot of folks, Mika, from construction who are leaving their jobs and who are starting companies and who have an innate understanding of problems. And I think that's half the battle.
I think that's a great point on, people, you're seeing lots of people. What sort of areas do you see people going into most right now when they're leaving? I would say, let's just call it like the traditional construction industry, but still staying in construction.
Yeah, actually, so I've met entrepreneurs who are starting out in three key areas that I'm seeing are pretty hot right now that that there is a problem in, right? So one is in estimation, right? And in real-time estimation. And why is real-time estimation important? Obviously everybody in the construction industry gets it, but because you've got to make high stakes decisions, right?
Oh yeah.
Like shit happens, something happened. Okay, how much is this going to cost me? Because guess what? That plan doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
And then right now, estimation is just this pretty arduous task where, the design has to get done. Then, estimators have to be involved in figuring out how much will this actually cost. And by the time you run through that cycle of a design that the owner wants and that fulfills the need for that physical asset and the budget that it takes, by the time you've run through all those cycles, sometimes you've spent way too much on the estimation and it kind of doesn't make the juice worth there you go, it doesn't make the juice worth the squeeze anyway. So I think there's a bunch of both experienced and inexperienced entrepreneurs that are working on solving the construction estimating problem and helping provide real-time estimates, right? And it's a pretty complex problem, by the way, right? Like as you very well know, from a technical standpoint, it's not a very easy problem to solve. So I'm excited about that. So that's one. I think a second area which I'm seeing folks jump into is generative design, right? Where like the nirvana state is you tell a computer, build me a stadium, and it builds it for you, right?
It
And
uses all of Doxel's data, which you've licensed out to.
area which I'm seeing, that's a second area which I'm seeing a lot of work in right now, which I'm very excited about. Um, And then a third area that I'm seeing a fair amount of work in is in applying tools like ChatGPT into generating proposals for customers, right? So like automated proposal generation, and how do you actually use all this knowledge that's inside a company, a construction company, a general contractor, for example, or a sub, to provide proposals quickly and win business fast. Um, so that's a third area that I'm seeing a lot of work in. So I'm pretty excited about those three. You know,
Yeah. I think in the near term, the kind of I'll call it general use of the GPTs on just, I would say, like boring construction workflows almost. I mean, the proposal is an interesting, exciting one. It's a high dollar value one. I can see why people are going there first. But there's all these like lower level processes that, from schedule reporting to just general data gathering. I mean, if you just sat with some people in the construction field and you walk through their workflows on a day-to-day basis, there's so many things there that I think can be massively elevated, reduced, or refined just by adding some simple, GPT. Especially when you think about like client customer relationship as well, the amount of information that's sent back and forth, it's just, there's such a high volume. And to me, that's where you can really simplify a lot of different processes. I'm super excited about that third one because I think that's a little bit more near term than, I mean, generative design will come, but as a scheduler, I'm more like finish that generative design and give me a generative schedule.
yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that tools like ChatGPT can unlock, right? And in fact, like there's great applications of this where, for example, companies like Procore are adopting ChatGPT like interfaces to give folks, you know co-pilots, essentially, just like Microsoft
Yeah.
Copilot, right? So I'm pretty excited about that as well. It helps to run through all those documents and kind of extract that value. So
Yeah. And I like the creation side. Like the other day, what was I trying to do? I was just doing something silly and I wanted to create a skewed bell curve. And normally I'd have to sit there and go back to my statistics days and mess around in Excel. And I literally was like, create using these 10,000 activities, create a skewed right data curve, a bell curve by, this many months. And it's like, boom, done. And I'm like, all right, moving on. Where previously it takes so long to just tinker around and figure it out and get it done. So I think it's going to be super interesting on that front. So great episode coming to a close. Saurabh, any final thoughts that you have for the crowd based on all the ping pong balls we bounced around off today?
um, no, I think the future is bright. There's a lot of exciting things happening in AI, and I'm pretty excited to see how human potential can fully be unlocked with all of these tools that we just riff-raffed about, showing up on the job site.
Yeah, awesome. Where can people find more of Doxel and you at?
Yeah, so more of me. I'm usually out in the field meeting with customers. I'm out on a lot of trade shows and things like that as well. Where can they find out more about Doxel? Just go to doxel.ai and just hit get a demo, and our sales team would love to give you a demo and show you what we've got, and hopefully get to a point where we can help you automate progress tracking and extract even more value from your powerful tools like P6.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, if you are not looking at automated progress tracking, you need to be. It is a absolute game changer on your construction site. It not only helps the project you're working on today, but as you kind of heard where our conversation was, it's going to really unlock value in your future projects. On another note, if you would love to hit the subscribe button and share Beyond Deadlines, we're trying to grow this crowd, grow the like-mindedness of people. Please share. It really, really helps us out. And for us at Beyond Deadlines, we will see you next week.